What is up, fam? It is your boy Sunil. Thank you so much for tuning in to So Real Sports Talk today. We have Mr. Jack Hammer of the Press Democrat here with us tonight, just like every Monday night. Jack, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Sunil?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Excited to have you on the show. Obviously, there's a lot going on with training camp going into week 2. So let us jump right into it. I know today you weren't at camp, but I'm sure you've been following it. You have all the insiders there. So why don't you give us some updates from camp? What are some of the big, breaking news that came out of camp today?
Well, I think the biggest thing right now, is going on camp, and it's going to be this way throughout. I think is the quarterback play. I know Kyle Shanahan says it's not a competition, but I think everybody who's following the team realizes that this is a competition in some way. Again, you have from everything that I heard today and the little snippets that I've seen from camp today, it sure sounds like Trey Lance is still keeping pace with Garoppolo in terms of his play. That's the way it was when I was there on Thursday on Friday, for sure. Was there's just not much separation between those two, so it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. I'm really looking forward to the next. We still got 6 weeks to go before this thing, starts for real. I think by the time those 6 weeks, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch how this plays out.
Now, I saw David Lombardi was talking about it, and maybe you could let us know from what you've seen. Is it true that right now Jimmy Garoppolo is going up against the ones and Trey Lance is going up against the twos, or are they both getting reps against the ones?
No, so the way that it works is at least it's worked so far was the first team offense goes out and runs 4 plays against the first team defense. Then they switch. The second team offense goes against the second team defense for 4 plays, and then they switch it up, and then it's the threes go usually like 2 or 3 plays, and then it goes back to the ones. The interesting thing about all this, though, is we keep hearing from reports and from Kyle Shanahan and so on how Trey Lance is running with the twos, except for the fact that he's playing with a second string offensive line, but he's playing with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, and those guys are all rotating through. So he's playing with the starters and throwing to the starting skill position people quite a bit. So he might not be getting reps with the ones in terms of the offensive line and the full team, but he's getting reps with guys that are starters. And obviously they're going up against the number 2s in camp. But that's the way that the situation works out. And I from everything I've seen so far, Lance has done a really good job.
And so, because this was something that I was interested in. So as far as the numbers that are coming out, we're hearing, Trey Lance went, 70% completion, a couple touchdowns, all these kind of things. So is he going up against the twos as far as defense, and Jimmy Garoppolo is going up against the ones as far as defense? Or are they going up? Are the defenses a mixture as well with some of the top corners, secondary safeties, and linebackers? Is Trey throwing on any of those guys as well?
It's mostly the second guys.
Gotcha.
The first week, even a little bit today, not as much, but that first week especially, you had some starters out, so you still are you're running your second team. Kentavious Street is playing defensive tackle, for example. Samson Ebukam is in place of Nick Bosa. You've got some changes in the secondary because you're missing Jaquiski Tartt in the back there, and then you're also missing Emmanuel Mosley. So you've got Tim Harris Jr. Running against that first team offense as well. So it's a mixture throughout. So I think when you watch it, you're seeing a lot of pressure on Trey Lance, just like you're seeing a lot of pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo when it comes to like the pass rush in front of him. So I don't really see a whole lot of difference. I mean, there's, the receivers may get open a little bit more often or so on, but it's not a very big jump because he still has the twos in front of him.
Got you. So we got to take those numbers with a little bit of grain of salt. Obviously Team Trey Lance is throwing Jimmy Bus's numbers under the bus and like kind of just saying, you know, he's not gonna be the star, all this kind of stuff. But he is technically going up against better competition than Trey Lance is.
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, you know, on the day that I was there, I think Garoppolo was 6 of 11 or something like that. And of those six completions, 4 of them were checkdowns, and then he had a couple that went down the field a little bit. The farthest pass he threw downfield was about 15 yards. But it goes beyond that. You know, you can watch them working, the quarterbacks working, you know, during, like, for example, on Friday, they're doing special teams is off working. They're doing a special teams period. But the quarterbacks go over and they're working on a side field with the quarterback coach, and they're working on specific plays that they're going to be running in team. And so they have equipment guys that are standing where the receivers should be, like where the throw should be. And so you can watch that as well. And I mean, there was one period where, you know, they're all working on throwing a deep corner route, and yeah, Garoppolo, you know, his ball was just, you know, fluttering along like a butterfly, you know, whereas the other 3 guys all have nice tight spirals, and it's getting there, you know, pretty quick, which doesn't sound like a lot, but then when you watch team period, they're running the same play that they were just over on that side field practicing. Both quarterbacks run that same play. There's only one quarterback that's going to take the shot down the field. You know, Garoppolo took that shot, and you know, and he didn't even take the shot. He tried to hit the crosser instead, and you know, he killed some worms with it, and then you know, Trent Lance threw the deep ball, and you know, it was a little bit of a break because the safety wasn't able to get his hand on the ball and undercut it. But still, you take those. You're not going to hit those shots unless you take the shots, and I don't think those are shots that Garoppolo is going to take very often.
So you're seeing, you know, kind of what we've all been hoping for is that, you know, Trey is going to be a little bit more of an aggressive quarterback and take a few more deep shots to open up the offense than Jimmy Garoppolo. You're even seeing that in the first, you know, week and a half, or first, I guess, full week of training camp. You're already seeing that kind of decision-making difference with their aggressiveness.
Yeah, you're seeing the ball go down the field a lot more often. So, you know, again, that part, some of the, like with Garoppolo and his team reps, you know, there's a couple of times where the checkdowns, that's where you need to go, because you know, you can see the coverage is, you know, it's decent downfield, so the checkdown's the right spot to go. But it's then when he goes downfield, he's not hitting those either. So it's just there's not very much separation. I would say if I was, you know, to put them in a race, you know, maybe Garoppolo's a step ahead of him, and that's about it. It's not like he's way ahead of him.
Got you. Now, there was, I guess, an injury in today's camp with Al-Ashir going down with an apparent, I guess, leg injury. Any updates on that, or anything you could tell us about that injury?
Well, from in watching Kyle Shanahan in his press conference today, what he had said was the trainers felt like it was going to be okay. You know, they were pretty optimistic about it, but they were still going to have to go and run some more tests. But they felt like they were going to come out of that unscathed.
Beautiful, cool. Well, thank you for that. Let's move on. You know, obviously you got to spend some time, you know, face to face there last week. You've been paying close attention to what's going on during camp. So, who are some of the big bright spots out of camp right now that you've been seeing with your own eyes and just been hearing about from being around the team as well?
Yeah, so I'm going to stay away from the rookies because I know we're going to talk about them in a little bit specifically. So of the non-rookies, you know, Contavious Street had a really good day on Friday, and he was able to get in there and get a lot of reps with Javon Kinlaw's non-injury, even though he was missing team period. So, you know, Street got a lot of run, and he did really well. He's showing that he is a guy he's going to be a player on this team. This is the first time that he's shown up for training camp and not had to deal with some kind of an injury or still rehabbing from one in his career. And it's kind of showing. His play's been done really well so far. So I would say, you know, he's definitely somebody to look for. Is he going to be a starter? Most likely not, but I think he has the potential to be a really good rotational player. You know, and even last year, and you go back and you look at the Like, for example, the Rams game, that second Rams game down in Los Angeles, Javon Kinlaw started, but he only played 21 snaps in that game to like 40 for Kentavious Street. So they liked him even last year as he was getting healthy. And he played the majority of his snaps were in the last 6 weeks of the season. I think he played 200 of his 381 snaps over the last 6 weeks. Part of that was obviously an injury to Kinlaw when he got injured in Dallas there and then missed the last 2 games. But still, he played quite a bit. I think he's a guy they're looking to really show up this season and be a really strong interior role player for them.
Pinor wants to know any updates on Richie James Jr. How's he looked?
Yeah, he at least he hasn't looked all that great. On Friday he didn't catch a pass that I remember, and he was wide open running across the middle and dropped a ball from Trey Lance. There's just too much heat on it, and Lance throws that ball pretty hard, and it wasn't one of those that hit him in the chest, but it was just a little in front of him, and higher. But he should have been able to, and he got both hands squarely on the ball, and the ball just flew through his hands. So that was an incompletion. So he hasn't really showed up very much as of yet. But going back to that Trey Lance and his arm, I mean, there was one where he threw a curl to, he looked off to his right, worked back to his left, and threw a curl to Deebo Samuel, hit him right between the numbers, and I think he was trying to throw the ball through him. The ball actually hit Deebo in the hands and bounced off. He had to double catch it. That's how hard the ball was getting there.
Wow.
That's the one. That's what shows up with him is his arm strength is very strong. And there's going to be times when I think he needs to get to the point where he can take that off of his throws and only do that when he absolutely has to. I'm not sure if he has that ability yet, so we're going to have to see that. Be able to get a little bit of touch on those throws. Instead of it always being driving it in there. Because that did come into play with an out route that he threw. They got tipped and knocked away. As if he had just thrown that with a little bit of arc on it, he could have got over the underneath defender, and it would have been a nice completion on the sidelines. But it was too flat, and Marcel Harris was able to knock it down.
One of the biggest things that people have been talking about with that wide receiver core is after Ayuk and Deebo, who's going to really solidify that wide receiver 3 spot and the rest of the depth. Obviously, we still have a lot of time before these decisions need to be made. But if week 1 was the only week we had to make decisions based off of that week of training camp, who were some of the most impressive receivers after Deebo and Ayuk?
Yeah, well, the Ayuk and Samuel I do want to touch on them really quick because we were talking about guys that were really impressing, and they've looked really good. They've really shown. They've really done a really good job. Some of it could be the fact that they're getting more deep balls from Trey Lance, quite frankly. And so they're not having to just get the ball and be the yak bros, even though we know they're capable of doing it. But the other one, Mohamed Sanu, you're hearing a lot of people talking about him, and he's done a good job. He's not an explosive player like Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk, but he's a solid receiver. Possession type of receiver. He's kind of he's going to be very simple. He's, to me, I had this conversation with Grant on the field. We were kind of talking about it, and he's Kendrick Bourne, but maybe just a tick bit behind him.
But a bigger body, right? So he's somebody who maybe in the red zone might be a little bit more of a target than the guy you just mentioned. Kendrick Bourne was for the 49ers.
Well, if you remember, Kendrick Bourne was one of their top red zone threats.
Right.
And I do think that Mohamed Sanu has the ability to do that. Well, he caught a touchdown pass today in the red zone because that's where from what I understand, the team drills were all down in the red zone area. So that's what they were focused on today. When I was there on Friday, they were working on third and 5 and 3rd and long. So, every day in their team period, they're kind of working on different situations right now. They haven't tried to put it all together quite yet. But that'll be coming. But yeah, those guys have all looked good. Mohamed Sanu definitely looks good. On Friday, he was targeted 5 times, tied for the most on the team. He had 4 catches out of the 5 targets that were thrown his way. So he's looking good. Beyond that, I don't think there's anybody else that really has separated themselves at all. Those are really your top 3 guys.
Got you. And
as far as receivers,
can we go secondary? Talk a little bit about what you've seen out of the secondary. Verrett, Mosley, how are they looking, coming into training camp?
Yeah, well, Mosley hasn't been able to practice yet. Mosley's been on the reserve COVID-19 list.
Oh, that's right.
So he hasn't been on the field yet, but Jason Verrett's looked really good, and same with Jimmy Ward. He's looked really good as well. They've looked really good. And in the other secondary players, Tim Harris Jr. has been on the other side, and he's been
Dante Johnson, I think, has been playing, right?
Yeah, but the guy that they had, Tim Harris Jr. as the backup, he was the back. They had him. He was the one that was running with the ones last week. He didn't play. He didn't practice today, so that's why you saw Embry Thomas got some run with the ones, because Dante Johnson was out as well. Was a little dinged up. So Embry Thomas got some starters reps today. The other guy, and then there was one other one. I'm blanking on who the other safety was at the moment. I apologize.
Jefferson?
Oh, no, not Jefferson. It's Tavon Wilson. Has been running at strong safety. Looked good. He's making plays. The secondary guys are looking real good. There was one ball, I think it was Garoppolo. He hit Mohamed Sanu on kind of an over route, and if they were in a football game, I think Jimmy Ward would have taken his head off. He did kind of poke him in the face a little bit. I mean, he was right there. He was about right. He kind of got him a little bit, even though on accident. But as he was kind of going for the ball. But if they were playing with pad on and it was an opponent, I think he probably would have been one of those highlight reel plays that you see.
Beautiful. How's Kittle been looking?
We haven't really seen a whole lot of George Kittle. On Friday he didn't get the ball very much. He was called for a holding on a toss sweep out to the right side. They tossed the ball to go around the end and held the outside linebacker there and got called for it because they do have the refs there. There was a few times where he wasn't in the right spot based on the kind of the conversations. You kind of can hear the coaches and him talking at one point when I was walking behind him, and he was saying, well, this happened, so I went here instead of there, and the coach is telling, so there's things going on all the time, and we're a week into this thing. Tomorrow is when it's going to get, I think you're going to see these things really start to ramp up starting tomorrow, because tomorrow the pads go on.
Right. And then is there anything you could see as far as the offensive line and that running game? Anybody's kind of standing out? Anything looking promising out of just the running game overall?
Well, they're looking okay. One of the rookies had a heck of a day on Friday, but at the same time there was Wayne Gallman had a really nice run around the right end. He kind of ran something to the right side, and he did a really good job getting up behind his offensive lineman. And as soon as the hole opened up, he just exploded through. And I still get excited about watching, even though I'm supposed to be quiet. I still get excited about well executed football plays, and so I kind of made a noise. And there was a lady photographer who turned around and asked Grant and I if we were big fans of Wayne Gallman. It was quite funny.
That's awesome. Panor is bringing up Grant pissing off people in the stream because he's talking down Kittle and brought up Dwelley. Yeah, I think Jack Hammer and Grant Cohn are two big conductors of the Dwelley train.
You got to get on board. That guy Ross is the boss. I don't know if you heard today, but according in his press conference, he talked about how he's bigger, stronger, and faster. He said it about 5 times. So you got to believe him. But no, it's George Kittle's going to be George Kittle. We're early on here, and things are going to change as camp goes through. He's going to be fine. I think Ross Dwelley's going to, he's going to improve. I think he's in a contract year, and things are going to get interesting for him after this one as far as his contract and stuff goes. So you might have a really good chance of him coming out and being the best that we've seen of him so far in terms of
Beautiful. Roster. It's Overreaction Monday, so we could go with it. Dwelley's going to be the starter, is what Jack Hammer is saying. Kittle's going to move to tight end too.
Real quick before you jump onto the rookies, we didn't talk about the pass rush.
Please.
We didn't talk about that, and I think that has to be talked about because the defensive linemen, those guys, they really dominated practice on Friday. They did a tremendous job of shutting down the run. You had, again, Kentavious Street was the one I mentioned before. He had a nice play where he he got through Laken Tomlinson and would have had a tackle in the backfield if they had pads on. DJ Jones on the first play of team period did a great job of getting through between Daniel Brunskill and Alex Mack. I'm not sure which one missed their block there, but he was able to bounce a run out wide that strung it out for no gain. So those guys looked really good. And the pass rush overall, considering there was no Nick Bosa and no Dee Ford on that day, they were really doing a good job of pressuring the quarterbacks. I think that's part of the reason why their numbers weren't all that great on Friday specifically. And Samson Ebukam is a guy who I think we need to keep an eye on. I think he's going to be helped out quite a bit by the fact that he's only playing defensive end with the 49ers instead of switching back and forth between linebacker and defensive end like he did with LA.
Who was the other guy on the edge? Obviously, Ebukam was on one side. Who did they play on the other side of him on the edge?
Oh, Eric Armstead was out there most of the day.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah, with the ones.
Got you. Cool. Well, I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch today, so I did want you to touch on some of the rookies that were impressive. Obviously, we spoke a lot about Trey Lance in the beginning of the show, so maybe we could skip Trey because you've talked pretty high on him. But any of the other rookies really making a name for themselves out there?
Yeah, Lance obviously is. The other one, Elijah Mitchell, is looking really good too. He's looking just like the guy that's really Trey Lance and Elijah Mitchell. When you watch them on the practice field, they look just like the guys that I saw on their college film. But I mean, they're doing those same things. They're making those same kind of plays. And what I mean by that is when you watch Elijah Mitchell at Louisiana in college, he was a guy that primarily ran between the tackles, and that's where his big runs came from. That's where they utilized him. And on Friday at camp, you saw that again. I know they don't have pads on, so he's not, getting hit, but he's explosive up the middle. He hits the hole. He's got a little bit of movement ability, but he's still working his way up the field. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how he progresses once the pads come on tomorrow. So I'm really that's one of the guys I'll have my eye on when I'm there tomorrow.
Gotcha. Who else?
Aaron Banks is doing okay. He's kind of coming along. I think he had a little bit of a slow start, but I think the offensive linemen have they're going to struggle a little bit more right now. When there's no pads on, it's a little bit less surface area for them to grab onto and hold,
Mm-hmm.
And so those guys can be a little bit slipperier and get by. So, he struggled a little bit early on. Friday, he seemed to like he was doing better. Again, that's another one tomorrow with the pads on. I'm really excited because I'm going to be able to see that. I want to watch the one-on-one drills and see if they do that with the defensive linemen, because I don't think they've really done that yet. And so it'll be fun to watch him go up against these guys and see how he holds up.
Are they playing him at right guard like we expect?
Yeah, they're playing him at right guard, and he's running with the two. So when Trey Lance is on the field, he's on the field. So maybe that's part of the reason. Maybe that's part of the reason why Trey Lance is doing so good too, right? He's got that big guy up front of him that's giving him some extra time to throw the ball.
Right. And then moving into the third round draft picks, guys like Trey Sermon, Ambry Thomas, have we seen any flashes out of them?
Trey Sermon, he's actually running quite a bit with the ones, and they threw him the ball quite a bit when I was there on Friday. He got again, playing with Garoppolo, you're getting the checkdowns and things like that. Not his fault, but the way that the coverage dictates to him. He had the ball thrown his way a couple of times. In the running game, wasn't able to really see him get going very much. It seemed like the first team defense really on Friday kind of dominated practice. They got the better of the offense. There was one nice run to the outside on the right side for him as well, along the far sideline where he was able to break free. I think he's a guy that we'll see more of tomorrow. And then Ambry Thomas hasn't been running with the ones. He's been kind of, playing with the twos and the threes. And then just the way things broke today, he got in there with the ones, but he hasn't been overly impressive quite yet. So it's been a little bit of a disappointment.
Oh my goodness, that's my guy. I banked everything on. So Ambry, it's okay. It's still early. He doesn't have pads on. He needs to be able to play physical with these guys to be able to maximize his ability. And I guess he's not able to play physical because of the pads.
Exactly.
Anybody else out of the rookies that I know you talked about Mitchell, but any of these guys, Hafanga, Lenore, any of these guys been able to show anything while they've been out there?
I didn't really see a whole lot of Lenore and Hufanga. One of the things that's interesting with Hufanga is, they're wanting to get him to be a safety. That's one of the things that they've talked a lot about. But then he's also spent quite a bit of time before practice during that first week working linebacker type of drills. Working coverage skills as a linebacker, and so that's interesting. But he's not running with them in team period or in individuals. It's just pre-practice work. It's Marcel Harris that's working with the linebackers and making that switch from safety. It looks like he's full time moving from safety to linebacker so far.
Cool. Pinor has a question about Lance. How's Lance ball placement? Not deep throws, but more of the short intermediary. I'm guessing he's asking about.
It's good. It's not. It hasn't been pinpoint on a regular basis, but he's getting the ball, within the catch radius the majority of the time. He's had a couple of clunkers. He had one, right at the beginning of the team period where he had George Kittle running across on a kind of like a deep, crosser, and he had him wide open and he skipped it to him. But after that he stepped it up. He's a guy who through the first week of camp doesn't seem to do very well with his first throw, but as he gets going, he improves quite a bit. So I'd say it's not where you want it to be quite yet, but it's not you can live with it.
Excellent. Anything else major coming out of training camp that you wanted to talk about?
No, we hit on most of them last week because you have the D Ford thing. I think is we're not talking about things that are major. D Ford running today in team period, I think is a major development. Mm-hmm. Here's a guy who throughout the entire off season was looked at as on his way out of San Francisco. There was no way the 49ers were going to keep him and all these kind of things. They end up reworking his deal, and then the thought, and even kind of what the 49ers were saying was that that basically the rework contract was just to lower his cap number, but they weren't expecting anything from him. Right. And then all of a sudden here, he comes out, the pup thing doesn't happen. He's out there practicing. He's of the guys that were question marks going in, he's the only one that hasn't had a day off yet. He hasn't had a rest day. He's been out there every day of practice. And then today he was running with in the team drills. I know that he has the back issues and there's concerns there. But if he can continue on the same path, the trajectory that he's been on through the first week of practice, if that continues for the next 6 weeks into the season, that's a huge plus for that 49ers defensive front.
That's amazing, man. Well, that's great. I know, today, Jack, we had a little bit of a time constraint. So we're a little bit under 30 minutes right now. Is there anything else that you wanted to get out, or pretty much we touched on everything you wanted to talk about today?
No, I think we talked about the majority of the main topics that have been happening in camp. It's going to the Matthew signing was one that I found interesting, partly because I kind of mentioned that on our All 49ers stuff about 2 weeks ago. No, but they're in a good position. And these guys, they got a talented team. It's going to be really interesting to see. Again, I've said this about probably too many times for the stream, but. Tomorrow with the pads going on, real football starts. And so I'm looking forward. I'm glad I'm going to be there. It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to all kinds of stuff. I'm really looking forward just to hearing that sound of what it's like, because once you put pads on, that noise that you hear, there's nothing like standing right next to guys hitting. And I can only imagine it's been, it's 1988, 89 when I went to Rockland and watched the 49ers practice up there when I was, a young kid, just starting high school. That's the last time I've been that close to professional football players beating up on each other. So I'm really looking forward to being there for that and watching practice and kind of see who starts to show up.
I love it, man. I love it. We'll be looking forward to all of your articles and tweets and stuff from practice tomorrow. It's great. Once again, Jack, I appreciate you taking the time to come on. I know we're going to be more regular on Mondays with this show. I know you just put out a new article with the Press Democrat. Anything else you want to plug while we have the guys watching right now?
No, that's really it. Normally on Tuesday nights I do my Niner Chatter show where we do the call-ins. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do that this week because between camp and then I have to get my son who decided he's playing football for the first time. That's why we're getting off a little earlier tonight because I got to go get him from practice. But it's all good. Just keep an eye out because I'm trying to get stuff on YouTube on a daily basis. I'll be down at camp tomorrow. Definitely going to have the camera running for drills and things like that. It's too bad you can't do any of the team stuff, but definitely going to get you guys as much coverage as we can, and just try to make it as fun as possible throughout this whole process. This is from a reporter standpoint, I think this is probably one of the funnest times of the year because you're actually able to get into the nitty gritty of, at least for me, especially as a football guy, to get into the nitty gritty of practice and the team getting built up because once. In a couple of weeks, they're going to shut off the availability to just really stand there and watch it. And at that point, we're just kind of watching the games like everybody else.
I love it, man. I put Jack Hammer's YouTube link in the description. Obviously, he has his Twitter handle on the screen right now. So if you guys want up to date news out of training camp, make sure to go follow him. Jack, we will have you again next Monday on the show. Thank you so much for coming on the show, guys. Thank you so much for jumping on the stream. Till next time, remember, keep it so real. Have a great night, guys.
Yes.